welcome to my channel. If you are new here, hi, hey, hello, my name is Meg and we do crafty things here. So if you like crafty things, please do consider subscribing. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing and tuning in to another video. So today we're going to be doing a first for me, which is knotting right onto a keychain piece. I normally do them like separate and feed them onto a keychain. So this is going to be fun. I picked this up at my local craft shop, but they are on Amazon and stuff. You could also use a toothpick or just do this right on a loop, whatever you please. We are going to be doing a pattern one of you guys suggested on another video, which is a Spider-Man pattern. So for that, we're going to be using bracelet book pattern 26413. And you'll need 19 base strings for this pattern. I'm going to be using this Aunt Lydia's Fashion 3 crochet thread. And as you can see, I have cut all my pieces to fold in half, except for that one because it's not an even number of strings. You'll also need your embroidery floss or colored string. I'll be using gray for the background on this, black for the outline, white for the web, and then classic red and blue for Spider-Man. Now this pattern does have the background and the web one color, but I wanted to split it up to make it a little nicer. You'll also need scissors and of course something to anchor with. I'll be using tape today. So first things first is we need to attach our strings to our keychain here. So to do this, I use a lark's head knot, which is the same as when I'm using a toothpick. And to do this, you're just going to take your folded string and fold it over whatever you're tying onto and just pull your loose ends through the loop of your folded string. The only thing you need to watch here is that you feed them all through the same way, because there is a loop of string that appears on the one side of the lark's head knot and not the other. Now, because this pattern has an uneven amount of strings, in some cases, if it was a larger pattern where it wasn't as noticeable, it wasn't as dead center on the pattern, I would just add another string in to the one side and call it a day, make it even, make it easy on myself. But today I'm actually going to do just a single string, and when the time comes, we will knot over both pieces at the very top there a couple times until it's locked in, and then we'll drop it down to the main base string. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll show you when we get to it though, so you're not too confused. So to start out with this pattern, we're going to use our background color. So for me, that is our dark gray, and we are going to do 9 knots. Now you'll see here, that is not 9. No. And you know when I realized? Do you know when I realized that? An hour into knotting. An hour into knotting. Oh my gosh. I quit. I rage quit that night. I was like, I'm not even going to untie this right now. I give up. I'm done. I'm walking away. This tutorial almost didn't get filmed because I was like, I don't know if I want to undo it, friends. I don't know if I want to undo it. But I did it. I did it for you guys. So the next clip, the strings are going to be curly and you'll know why. And here we go. Whee! All that's undone now. So I've got 8 forwards knots here, and I'm going to do my last 9th before we do our color change. So again, when you're working left to right on an alpha, you're doing forwards knots, right to left, you're doing backwards knots. So now I'm going to do my color change. So I'm going to do a flat alpha color change here. So I've left my gray string on top and I've pulled the white string into the same spot. Now because my next knot is white, I'm going to do half of my forwards knot with my white string. I'm going to make sure it's nice and pulled up and straight. And then I'm going to take my gray string that I am changing from, and I'm going to lay it over top of that half white knot. And I'm going to tuck it underneath the rest of the base strings and pull it as horizontal as possible. Then I'm going to grab my white string and finish the second half of our forwards knot, and that effectively hides that gray string so we don't see it. And the idea is that it makes your color changes in your alphas a little flatter. But if that's too confusing, you can do a regular color change, which is what I'm going to do here. So you saw I pushed my white string right to the back of the work, and then I pulled the gray string in, going underneath that white string into the exact same spot that I just pushed it out of. And I'm going to take my gray string and I'm just going to do a forwards knot. Clean, easy, simple. Both work well. Both can have great results. In fact, this is probably the last piece I'm going to do the flat alpha technique on, because personally, I don't see a ton of difference in my own work, but it works wonders for a lot of people. So at this point, we're just finishing out this row with our background color. So in a minute here, we get to our loner string. So at this point, I'm wishing I cut this a little bit longer because it would make this easier. But as you can see, I've got the top just folded over. So I'm going to hold those two pieces together as if they're one bass string, and I'm going to do my knot over that. So for this keychain, I thought I would also do a straight edge on it. So I'm going to do half of a forwards knot and then half a backwards knot. So it's a forward backwards knot. And I'm going to do all of that over both pieces of this string, treating it as if it's one bass string. And what this essentially does is, unlike a regular alpha where you have that kind of ridged line on the side, it turns the ridge line inwards so you end up with a straight edge. Now going down to the next knot, we are going to do another forwards backwards knot. So half the knot is a forwards knot, making that 4 shape, and the other half of the knot is a backwards knot, making that backwards 4 or sail shape. And I'm still knotting over both pieces of the string. So it's basically kind of go until you feel like it's secure enough that you're not worried about, like, if you pull on the longer piece that the other half is going to come out. So I think at this point doing the 2 knots over it is good. So now we're going to knot all the way 8 knots in, and then we're going to do a color change. So again, I'm doing the flat alpha color change, so I'm going to bring my gray string up right beside my gray string, and I'm going to do a half backwards knot with my black string because we're working right to left, remember. Now I'm going to take the knot that the color rather that I'm changing from. I'm going to lay it across the knot I just made and then tuck it underneath the bass strings, and I'm going to make it as horizontal as I can. And this is because if I didn't have it very horizontal and I did the second half of this black knot, the knot is going to be looser, or it's going to be longer, because you've smushed the string in there a different way. So try and pull it as horizontal as possible, if not even a little upwards. Will give you the best, most round knot you can possibly get in the color change. So speaking of color changes, we're switching again to our white here. So I've done my half forwards knot with my white string, then I'm going to lay my black string across the top of the white string, or the white knot that I just did, and tuck it underneath the rest of my bass strings. Then I'm going to grab my white string again and finish out my backwards knot to complete the color change. And now we're going to do one more color change for the start of Spidey's outline here. So we're going to do half of our backwards knot with our black color, which we are changing to. I'm going to fold my white string, which I am changing from, over top of that knot we just made and tuck it underneath the rest of my bass strings. And I'm going to grab my black string here and I'm going to finish out my backwards knot doing the second half of it to effectively close off that color change. And now we've got another color change quite quick here. We're going to grab our background color, pull it right up in beside our black string and do our half backwards knot. And then we're going to grab our black string, of course, and we are going to lay it down across the top of the half knot we just made. Now, I know I say to tuck it underneath the rest of your bass strings, but you don't actually have to do that immediately. You can do that after you complete the second half of the knot. I just found personally that I do get slightly better, cleaner results if I pull that string back before I tie the second half of the knot. Anyways, we're going to finish out the rest of our row with backwards knots with our background color. And again, we're going to do the straight edge on our left-hand side here. So on the left-hand side, we're going to do a backwards forwards knot. So the first half of our knot is a backwards knot and the second half is a forwards knot. And then we go down to the next row and we're going to do the same. So it's a backwards forwards knot, which effectively shifts that ridge line from the outside like a normal alpha to the inside, which gives our straight edge. And now we are going to carry on with our gray string doing forwards knots now until just one before the black knot in our previous row. So we've done 7 knots with our gray string, and we're going to bring our black outline string in again, and we're going to do a color change. So we're going to do a half forwards knot, and we're going to lay our gray string over top of that and tuck it underneath our base strings. Again, this is preference. I find it looks cleaner when I did it this way, so that's the way I do it. And then you're going to take your black string and do the second half of that forwards knot to close off that color change. And then this little area has a lot of color changes in it really quick. So if you guys stick through this, it does get a little bit easier once we get into kind of the more color block of Spider-Man. So now we're pulling in our red for the first time. I already have this anchored down because I've already knotted past this point once, but just tape down your red string and pull it right up beside our black string. We'll do half of our forwards knot with our beautiful bright red string, and then we're going to fold our black string down across the half knot that we made with our red string. Then we're going to tuck it under our base strings, or not, up to you, like I said, and we're going to finish out the second half of our forwards knot with our red string and close off that color change. And from this point on, we really start to see the beauty of this pattern, which is that it is dead symmetrical. So we're going to do our white knot now, so half of a forwards knot, lay our red string over top, and then do the second half of our forwards knot to close out that color change. And then we're going to do the exact mirror of what we have on our left side, which will be one red knot, one black knot, and then finish out the row with our background color. So drawing our red string in, we are going to do half of our forwards knot, then lay our white string across the top of that, tucking the rest under the base strings. And then we're going to finish the second half of our forwards knot to complete the color change. And so now we need to switch to our black string to complete our right hand mirror of the pattern. So we're going to do half of a backwards knot, or sorry, half of a forwards knot, oh my gosh, with our black string, and then we're going to lay that red string across that half knot. Grab the second half of our black string. It's still the same string. We're just going to use it to make the second half of our knot. It's late, okay? Don't come at me. But at this point, I am going to stop breaking down the string movements for every single color change, I think. And I'm just going to say we are doing a color change. So now we are going to draw our gray string up for a color change and finish out the row with our gray string doing forwards knots until we reach the edge. All right, now if you've reached this far in the video, let me know down below which Spider-Man movie was your favorite. And this can be of any generation. It doesn't have to be like the most recent ones. I really enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse. It kind of surprised me. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I actually really enjoyed it. And I think Spider-Gwen was really cool. She was, I think, my favorite. Okay, so I'm going to narrate you through another straight edge technique here on the right hand side, and we're going to leave out the short tail here. I think we've got it locked in well enough. We don't need to knot around it. So on the right hand side of your work, if you're doing the straight edges technique, you're always going to do a forwards backwards knot, and then you're going to start your next row with another forwards backwards knot. Okay, I think a lot of people forget that you still need to do both knots and only do one, and then can't figure out why their work is like warping and bowing really bad. And I think in a lot of cases that's what people are doing, but I'm getting sidetracked from the pattern. So we're going to do 6 knots in our background color, and then we're going to do a color change to our black for the outline of our Spidey man, and then we're going to do 2 red knots, a white knot for our web, and then complete the mirror on the other side with 2 red knots, a black, and then the background colors. Background colors. Did I just say colors like we got a freaking rainbow going on in the background here? No, just color, singular. So, oh, I'm so tired. It's like 1 a.m. So we're going to do 2 backwards knots with our red string because as we know, when we are working from the right hand side of our work to the left in an alpha, we are always doing backwards knots. So there we go, 1, and here is number 2. And then we're going to do another color change to our white spiderweb color. And I think this just really, doing the separate background color, I'm really happy with it because I feel like the original pattern didn't have the gray separated. So the web just kind of was the entire background. And I think it looks a lot more effective to have the background color. Now there were a lot of cute keychains and little bracelets and stuff on there with the same color as the background, but I do like the added effect, I think personally, of splitting the 2 up and having the different colored background. I think it looks really cute because I think it almost looks like the white base strings that are wrapped around the keychain are actually like Spidey's web. Anyway, so we've done another color change to our red, and of course we're working the mirror of what we did on the right. So that is 2 red knots, and then we're going to color change again to our 1 outline knot with our black, and then we're going to finish out the row with our background string. All right, so you told me what your favorite Spider-Man movie was, but if Spider-Man isn't your favorite superhero, who is? Mine is Captain America. I know I'm not even American, but I always like that he just gets back up no matter what the odds, no matter what he's facing, and he can do it all day. And I don't know, I find that inspiring. Like when you get knocked down, just get back up no matter what. All right, so on our left-hand side here, doing the straight edges technique, because we're working right to left, the first half of our knot is going to be a backwards knot. And then the second half will be the forwards knot, and then we'll do a backwards forwards knot to start our next row, where we're going to do 5 knots with our gray string, and then we'll switch to that outline color again. And we're building Spider-Man's feet here. And we're also getting into some larger chunks of color, which is kind of nice because the start of this pattern is a lot of color changes, especially for those of you who maybe don't do a lot of alphas. So a little bit of a challenge for everyone. We like that. Okay, so now we're going to switch to our red and do 3 knots in our classic red color here. And then we'll switch to our center line, our white web, and complete the mirror on the other side. So at this point, you guys may have noticed that I seem to be knotting a little bit faster. It's actually because this pattern is large enough that even when I cut out all of the extra, it was still sitting at like the 2-hour mark, which is obviously too big to upload to YouTube. So I asked you guys on Instagram if I should make it 2 parts or speed it up, and it was literally like 50-50 the whole time. So I opted to speed it up and see how it looks. So if you guys don't like this, because I was knotting slower than I normally do, if you guys don't like this, let me know if you would have rather seen this in 2 parts. Otherwise, I'm just doing 1 single white knot here for our web, and now we're going to do the mirror of everything we just did on the left on the right. So we are going to do our color change to our red here, and we're going to do 3 knots with our red string, 1 with our black, and then finish out the row with our background gray color. So this is kind of, this size of pattern is kind of the, I would say like the maximum size I can do as a tutorial. I get a lot of people requesting like large, full, like bookmark size alphas that have color changes in every row that you would have to like instruct through every single row. And unfortunately, as much as I would love to do that, that would have to be like a full series. Now, if you guys would like to see like a full tutorial series where I break up one really large bracelet into a detailed tutorial across a few videos, let me know that down below and I could maybe try doing that. I'm just afraid that people would get bored really quick because they'd be really long videos to do that. So let me know what you guys think down below. So I did one knot with my black string. Of course, we're working left to right, so that's a forwards knot. And now I'm switching back to my gray here, doing just forwards knots as we have done this whole time. Left to right, forwards knots, right to left, backwards knots. And we just finish out our row with the gray. And again, we get to the side here. We're going to do a forwards, backwards knot for that straight edge, and then we're going to do another forwards backwards knot. And it's important to remember when you're doing the straight edge that you won't necessarily get a straight edge right off the bat. You have to try and pull your string the exact same way, like your bass string when you're knotting on it, the exact same way every time, and then you'll get a flat edge. Otherwise, your edge can still look really warped. Fun fact. All right, so we've done 3 knots with our gray string in this new row, and we're going to pop our black string up and tuck that gray string under for our color change and finish out the backwards knot. And we actually do 2 knots with our background color here. And then we do 4 knots with our red string. So we'll leave that black color up, do half of our backwards knot with our red string, lay that black string over top and tuck it under, and then do the second half of our backwards knot and continue on for 3 more red knots. So there's 3 and 4 for a total of 4, as I said, 1 and then an additional 3. We can all count here, I hope. And then we do half of a backwards knot with our white string for our color change, press that red over and finish it out for our single line of web. Spidey's hanging upside down, okay? He's just chilling with us. He's just hanging, you know, chilling like a villain, except he's not a villain. He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. All right, so with our red string, we have completed our color change, and we're going to do 4 knots with our red string. So that's 3 and 4. And of course, this pattern is perfectly symmetrical, so we're now going to switch to our black string. So remember, that is a half backwards knot with our black string. Fold that red over top and tuck it underneath your bass strings, and then finish the second half of the knot with your black string. So we kind of make a sandwich with that red string in the middle of the knot. And then we're going to do one more black knot here. And it was at this point in the pattern that I realized I had counted out wrong the first time. So we're like far in already, and I had to undo all that. That's where I was at. So now we're going to color change to our gray, and we're going to finish out this row with the gray. I think I already said that, but yeah, needless to say, I was rattled when I got to this point and realized that I had done 1 knot too little, and it had off-centered the entire pattern. And I was like, this pattern is dead center and symmetrical. It's going to be way, way too noticeable to just fudge the pattern. So I did undo it all of it. And I was so mad at myself. You guys don't even know. I was so mad at myself. Okay, so our next row, we're going to do 2 knots with our gray string, and then we're going to switch to our outline color, that black, and do 1 knot. And then we start to see things taking shape, because this row we actually add in our blue for the first time. But if you're a dummy like me, you turn the camera off to go and grab the scissors and forget to turn it back on. Like, this was just the tutorial of my life, folks, okay? Everything going wrong. So you'll do 1 forwards knot with your blue, 3 forwards knots with your red, and then 2 forwards knots with your black, and then you'll meet me up here. Because that's how long it took me to realize I wasn't recording. Yay! And at that point, I wasn't undoing it. I had already undone so many knots for this video that wasn't happening. So I'm sorry. We did jump a little bit. I hope you forgive me. So we have done 1 knot with our white string. And now we've done, oh my gosh, excuse me, 1 knot with our white string. Now we're doing the mirror. So we are doing 2 black knots. And this is kind of finishing out Spidey's feet. We can kind of, when the pattern forms a little more here, you'll see that this is like the bottom of the heels of Spidey's little feet here. Now we're going to color change. So I'm going to do half of a forwards knot. I'm going to lay my black string across and tuck it under my bass strings as horizontal as I can get it. And then I'm going to finish the second half of my forwards knot with my red. And at this point, we're doing the mirror, so we have to do 3 knots like we did on our left side. So there's 2 and 3. And then we're going to do 1 knot with our blue string, 1 knot with our black string, and finish out the row with 2 gray knots. And let me tell you, these fingernails that I have going on here, they are so long. It made doing this so much more difficult. And honestly, like they looked cute though, so I wanted them. But like they were long. They were difficult to deal with. So I like them. They look cute, but trying to undo knots and stuff with them was trying to pick up the string with them was tedious. Like this actually took me so long to film just because it was so hard to pick things up. It was ridiculous. This class is ridiculous. If you get the reference, let me know. All right, so I'm switching to my gray color now for 2 knots. The first one being a standard forwards knot, and then the second one on our edge, of course, being a forwards backwards knot. So there we go, the 4 shape for our forwards, and then the second half of the knot will be a backwards knot. And then we'll repeat that again, a forwards backwards knot to start off our next row. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, of course, if you wanted to do just a standard alpha, you would just do a forwards knot and then a backwards knot to start the next row. No big deal, but I haven't actually done a tutorial with straight edges, so I thought we'd do it on this one. All right, so we've done that 1 knot of gray is actually all we need. We're switching to our background color and we're going to do 1 backwards knot with it as well. And then we are going to do 3 knots with our lovely blue string. So there's 1 and 2 and finally 3. Whoop whoop. And then we're going to do 1 knot with our red string. So I'll do half my backwards knot, then I'll lay that blue string across that and tuck it underneath my bass strings as horizontal as I can get, and then finish out that backwards knot with my red. And then we're going to immediately do another color change into our outline color. So this is kind of getting into like Spidey's ankles, his legs, so to speak. Like, what does that even, what? No, like it is his leg. It's right at his ankle. My gosh, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. All right, so then after we've done that 1 knot with our black, we are going to switch back to blue again. And we'll do blue for 2 knots here. So there's a 1 and there's a 2 coming right at you with the boom boom. This is what I said. Like, I don't know why you guys listen to me. And we're going to switch to our white and do our 1 white knot with our web. We're almost done the web part of this. That's kind of exciting. We're getting into this. Now we're going to complete our mirror. So we're going to do 2 knots with our blue string here. And there's a 2. And then we're going to switch to our to our outline color. So we'll do half a backwards knot, lay our blue over top of it, and then finish out our backwards knot with the black to sandwich that blue string in there. Then we're going to do 1 red knot, kind of finishing out Spidey's boots here. I guess it's not really, are they boots? Or are they like attached to his costume? I think it depends on which like movie or version you're watching. I'm going to call them as boots because they're like boots. So technical here, so technical. Then we're going to do 3 knots with this here blue string. Then we're going to do 1 knot in our outline color, so that black. And make sure, I find if you're doing the flat alpha technique as well, just be careful with your color changes. I find the string tends to get a little more stuck underneath the previous knots with the flat alpha technique than it does with the regular. So just keep that in mind. I feel like there's a little more manipulation to get the flat alpha to work as it should. So now I'm switching yet again to the background color, and we're just going to do 1 knot with it. And because it's on the edge, it's going to be a backwards forwards knot to get that straight edge look, you know, straight like a razor's edge. Now this next row is a little bit different. So you can see I've left the gray up, but the first knot of our next row is actually black. So I'm going to do the black knot just like a backwards forwards knot, as if I was using the gray. Now obviously I didn't use the gray, I just tucked it back underneath after I finished the black knot. Okay, so I didn't tuck the gray into the black knot, I just tucked it away once I had finished the black knot. Now we've done the black knot, we're going to switch to our blue, and we're going to do 4 knots with our blue color. And we're in Spider-Man's legs, coming up to his knees here. So we get that iconic upside down Spider-Man look. Now we're switching to black, and we're going to do black for 3 knots. And this is coming into his hands where he's holding on to the web. Okay, so there is 1 black knot, adjust as necessary to make sure those knots look good. You guys know I always say adjust it when you see it needs adjusting, not later. Doing more knots or more rows after it is not going to fix the problem, I assure you. So now we have done 3 knots with our black. In a fresh change of events, we are going to do 3 knots with our white string now. So we're going to start by doing a color change. So that's a half forwards knot with our white, lay that black across and tuck it under the bass strings, and do the second half of the forwards knot with the white, and then do forwards knots for the next 2 knots to complete the 3 knots wide. And this is kind of like, I don't know, the blob of web that Spidey's hanging on to. It's the part that's coming like out of his hands. Now we're going to do a color change, and we're going to do half of a forwards knot with our black color, our outline color. We're going to tuck the white underneath, across and underneath those bass strings, and finish out that color change with the black string. And then we're going to do 2 more forwards knots with our black string, because of course this pattern, as I've said a million times, is symmetrical, so we want everything on the right to look like the left, which actually makes this pattern really nice for kind of zoning in, because you just kind of read half the pattern and you can read, like, tell what you have to do on the other side based off what you've already done. So you don't have to like stop and keep looking at the pattern, which allows you to kind of get in a bit more of a groove, which I definitely did with this. So 10 out of 10 recommend for that. Anyways, we're switching to blue now, and we're going to do blue for 4 knots. We're right in Spidey's knee here. There's 3 and 4, and then our edge knot, just like on the left hand side, is going to be a black. So on the edge, remember with your flat alpha, you do a regular color change. So you tuck that blue string back and out of the way. Bring the black string right up into the same spot, and we're going to do our forwards backwards knot there. And then the next row down starts with a black knot as well, so we're just going to use our black string and do another forwards backwards knot. If you do a flat alpha color change on the edge, your string kind of wraps. You see it when I first experimented with this pattern in like Knotting Dangerously. Was it like number 1? I'll post it in the cards if you guys are interested in seeing what actually happens when you do that. So you can take a look. So we've done 3 knots with our blue string now, and now we're going to do just a single knot with our outline color, and then we start into Spidey's hands. So we need to grab our red back, pull it in, and we're going to do half of a, what are we even doing? Half of a backwards knot, because we're working right to left, and we're going to fold that black string across that half knot and tuck it underneath the other bass strings, and then finish that backwards knot with our red to complete the color change. We want 3 knots in red, so we're going to do 2 more backwards knots here, and then switch to our outline color. So our black, and we're going to do a color change. Of course, we're going to bring that black into the same spot we just left our red out of. We are going to do half of a forwards knot, and then we're going to lay that red string across that half knot and tuck it underneath all the other bass strings and finish the color change with the second half of that backwards knot. Now we're going to do the last white knot of Spidey's web. So this will be the last knot we use white for a while. So once you have finished this single knot, you can tuck the white up and out of the way so that you don't catch it on all the strings you're moving around, because the next time we'll use it is in the eyes. You can also, if you choose to, actually cut it off here and rejoin in a new white string for the eyes if you wish, but I just tuck mine up and out of the way. Now, of course, we do the same on the left as we did on the right. So that's 1 black string, or black knot with our black string. There we go. Speak, Megan. And then we do 3 red knots for Spidey's hands. So, of course, we're doing the color change here. So half the knot, lay the string across, do the other half of the knot. And then we do 2 more backwards knots with our red string. So there's 1 and 2 for the total of 3. As you do. 1, 2, 3. Easy as 1, 2, 3. As equal as do, re, mi, a, b, c. 1, 2, 3, baby, you and me, girl. Gosh, I haven't heard that in a while. Okay. Color change into our black just for 1 knot here. And then we're going to do actually the last row of Spidey's, the fill-in color of Spidey's knee. So we do 3 knots with our blue. And again, you see how I had to really like push that, manipulate it with my fingernail. That's because it was really getting caught up on the red. And I don't know why. I seem to experience that a little more with the flat alpha technique. I'm not entirely sure why, if it's just kind of the nature of having that half knot there that causes that in the first place or not, but it's a pretty simple fix. Just make sure that you get it tucked up in there where it needs to be before you knot the second half of the knot. Otherwise you will see bass strings and your lines will not be straight. So again, we're on the edge, and the edge is a different color, so we need to do a regular color change. So I've tucked the blue string back behind my work and out of the way. And then I bring the black string in and I do a backwards forwards knot because we're on the left hand side of our work. And now the next knot is actually supposed to be our background color. So I am going to do another backwards forwards knot, and you can see here that I left the black to the front. And that's because the next knot is actually black anyways. Otherwise I would have tucked it back underneath at this point. But I'm just going to pull it down now because that's naturally where the string fell. So we're going to do 3 knots with our black string, and this is the top of Spider-Man's knee. If you're not looking at the pattern and you're trying to like visualize this, this is the top of Spider-Man's knee. So we've done 3 black knots. Now we're going to switch into our red, and we're going to do 4 knots with our red string. So our first color change is, of course, half a forwards knot. We'll lay that black across and tuck it underneath, and then do the second half of the forwards knot to complete that color change, and then follow it with 3 more forwards knots. And then we're going to do another color change into our black. So we're going to do half of a forwards knot with our black string. We're going to switch to our red, tucking it across and underneath, and grab that black string again and finish out the knot. And now that we're not going to bring the white in, because remember that last row was our last knot of the web. So we're actually going to grab our red back in, and this is like Spider-Man's stomach, his torso, his body. And we're going to do our color change for one single knot and then go back to our black string again for a single knot as well. You know, you don't really notice how many color changes there are in a pattern until you're narrating it. And you're like, color change, color change, color change, color change, color change, color change, color change. Like, this was pretty simple to me, and I'm sitting here going, wow, this may not be as simple as I thought. Like, there's a lot of color changes in here. So, hopefully you guys enjoy this. A little bit more difficult than our previous patterns. It's all fun though. Allows everyone to grow, right? So now I'm going to switch into my red again, and we're going to finish up Spidey's hand here by doing 4 red knots. Pick out any fluffs or cat hair. I literally started this bracelet and the cat just came and sat at my feet. So occasionally there are fluffs that float through the screen. I apologize. They just like the flipping string. Now we're going to switch to our outline color, and we're going to do 3 knots with our outline color. Again, this is like topping off Spidey's knee. So I have done half of a forwards knot with my black, tucked the red across and underneath the other bass strings, and then I'm going to finish out the forwards knot with the black. And here we go, 2 and 1 more. We'll make 3 and the top of Spidey's left knee. Oh, that rhymed. And then our edge knot is going to be in our background color again. And because it is on the edge, we're doing a normal color change. So I've pushed the black string in behind our work and pulled the gray string right up where the black string left off. And because it's an edge knot and we're doing the straight edges technique, I am doing a forwards backwards knot on the edge to keep it straight and smooth. And then the next knot on the row below is also a gray knot, so I'm going to go ahead and do another forwards backwards knot there, and then do 2 more backwards knots to total 3 in our background color. And then we get back into Spidey's arms. He's taking shape. He is becoming a cool little neighborhood spider friend in front of our eyes. I'm so lame. Okay, so now we're going to do a color change. We bring that black string in, and I'm going to do half of a backwards knot, and then I'm going to pull the gray string down, lay it across that half knot, and tuck it underneath the other bass strings, and finish out the backwards knot with our black for that 1 single knot. Now we're going to pull our red string in for a color change. We're going to do half of our backwards knot with the red color, and then we're going to fold that black string across the top of that, tuck it back and away, and finish out the other half of our red knot. At which point we are going to do 1 more backwards knot with that bright red color. And then we're going to do a single blue knot. So fish out your blue string here, pull it into the same spot your red left off, and do half of a backwards knot with your blue string. So we do half the backwards knot, then we tuck that red across and underneath our other bass strings, and then finish out the backwards knot with the blue, effectively finishing off that color change. But you guessed it, there's another one, folks. So we're going to pull our outline color into that same spot, do half of a knot with our black, lay that blue across it, tuck it back underneath your bass strings, grab the other half of the black string, the other half, it's still the same string, it's not cut in half. Just grab your black string and do the second half of the knot. There we go, English. I do speak it sometimes. And then we're going to do 3 knots with our red color. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a Spider-Man can. That's definitely not the words. So we finish out our red color change and do 2 more backwards knots because we're working right to left with our red color here. There's 2. And 1 more makes the fabled 3. I don't know why the 3 is fabled, but details. Now we're going to pull our outline color back in for a single knot. And it's kind of, at this point I realized the right hand side of this keychain is starting to pull a tape a little bit, but because of where all the strings are anchored in, I can't really tape it back properly. So I'm just working with it, but that's why it starts to look a little bit tilted and not straight. It is because that right hand side of the key ring, or the side that you see on the right hand side of the screen, is a little bit tilted. It's coming a little bit loose. Alright, so we've done 1 knot with our black string now. We're going to switch to our blue, just like on the other side, for 1 single knot, which we will, of course, following the mirror of our right hand side, will be followed by 2 red knots for part of Spidey's arms. So we'll bring our red in, do half of a backwards knot, lay the blue across and tuck it underneath the rest of the bass strings, grab that red again and do the second half of our backwards knot, excuse me, and then do 1 more backwards knot with our red, and then we'll do a single black knot with that outline black to give him his cartoony comic book style, you know? Comic book style. Are you guys into comic books? Like, don't get me wrong, I love like the superhero stuff, but I'm not huge on the presentation of comics. Like, I enjoy the artwork, I appreciate the artwork, but I don't necessarily like the delivery of the story. Like, I prefer to have the description in words to build it in my head as opposed to looking at it in a picture. So I feel like the story isn't as like in depth. I feel like I don't get as attached to characters when I read a graphic novel or a comic book. So I can't say I ever got too into the comics, but I love like the superhero movies and stuff. I love the storylines in the movies and everything. So I'm like, well, theoretically, I like the superheroes, but I just can't get into comics. And I don't know if it's just because like I've never read a superhero comic. Like one of the classic ones, but I don't know whether it's just I haven't found a good one or what. Like, I did read part of the Walking Dead comics and they were pretty good, but even still I feel like I didn't get as attached as I would have if it was an actual book. Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way I process the information. Like, the visual just isn't my thing. I do appreciate the artwork. There's some really, really beautiful artwork in comics and graphic novels, like outstanding, absolutely. But, and I have a couple on my shelf that literally, I don't care so much about the story, but the artwork in them is fabulous. So I keep them on my bookshelf because they're pretty. That's why. Art. All right, so we have done 2 knots with our gray string while I'm busy here talking about comic books. We're going to do 1 knot with our black. And then we are going to switch to our red string for 2 knots, our blue for 1, our black for 1. And then when we reach that point, I'll explain the rest of the row. So we have switched to our, through our black. We're just going to finish off this red color change now. And we're going to do just 2 knots with our red string. And this point, like, Spidey in this pattern doesn't really have elbows. Like, it's kind of, he's kind of chibi. I'm not gonna lie. He's a little bit, like, he's simplified, but it's hard to say like where it is kind of like his elbow. It's where the arm shows it's kind of bending, but it also is like right up at his shoulder. So like it's Spidey's arm. That's what we're working on right now. So we've done one blue knot and we're going to switch to our outline color again. And we're just going to do a single knot with our black string here. So we'll flip that blue across, tuck it under, do the second half of the black knot for a successful color change. I know I said I was going to stop narrating the color changes, but then I'm like, I did that for a little bit and then I thought it was just weird. I'd simplified it too much. Why am I even narrating if I'm not going to explain how to do the things? Like, what am I doing? So I'm explaining them again. I hope you don't mind. And then we're going to switch back to our red string now, and our red is going to do 5 knots. So this is a nice little chunk of color before we have to do, you guessed it, another color change. How did you know? Gosh, it's like you're looking at the pattern or something. All right, so there's 4 and 1 more equals 5. And we're going to switch to our outline color again. We'll do 1 forwards knot because we are working left to right in an alpha bracelet. We'll flip that red across that half knot and tuck it underneath all the other bass strings. And then we're going to finish out the second half of our knot with our outline color. And then we're going to do 1 blue knot. So now we're going to grab that blue string and we're going to move all the other strings out of the way. Like, pro tip when you're making alphas, only lock in the strings you have to. Otherwise, you will create like a pillowing effect underneath your work. And even if your work is flat, it will kind of poof up in the middle just because you've got so much essentially stuffing underneath your pattern from carrying all those colors. So always take the time to only lock in what you absolutely have to. And that will make your work look as even and clean as it can. And that's regardless of whether you're doing the flat alpha color change or a regular color change. So pro tip right there. Boom. Okay, so we do our 1 blue knot. Now we're going to switch to our red string again. So we're going to pull that red string in. Careful not to pull all these other ones in. We don't need them in there. We'll do 1 knot, half knot with our red string, pull that blue across, tuck it under the bass strings, and bring that red string back for the second half of our forwards knot. Then we're going to do 1 more forwards knot, and then we're going to do 1 black knot with our outline color. Obviously the black is the outline, and we're going to do 2 knots then with our gray. So there we go, 2 red. Now we're going to switch into our black. Careful not to lock in that blue because we don't need to lock it into this color change. It's already locked in when we switched to the red. We're going to fold our red across that half black knot and tuck it underneath our bass strings, making sure everything's tight, kosher, looking good. Get that string as horizontal as possible, and then do the second half of your black knot. And then we'll switch to our background color. I did gray because I thought like doing a color would be maybe a little too much, or maybe I'm just too simple. I wasn't feeling any bright colors. I was letting Spider-Man stand out, okay? Wasn't gonna like do him dirty with like a blue background or something. Then he just loses his effect, you know? All right, so we're doing the straight edge. So again, that is a forwards backwards knot on the right hand side, followed by another forwards backwards knot for the start of our next row, where we're going to do just 2 knots with that gray color, and we're going to switch to our outline color. And this is like the top of, this is like Spidey's armpit in this row. Spidey's armpit. So we're going to do that 1 black knot, then we're going to switch to our red again, and we're going to do 2 red knots here at the top of Spidey's armpit. You'll see why it's the armpit, because after this second here red knot, we're going to do a black outline knot, and that'll be the last knot of like the inside of Spidey's arm. Sparter's arm? What am I even saying anymore? Spidey's arm, so it's like, you know, it's like his armpit. It makes sense, okay? Logic. So we did half of our black knot, put that red across, and now we're going to do the second half of the black knot for that last inner outline on Spidey's arm. Then we're going to do one blue knot. So we're going to bring that blue string in and do half a backwards knot, lay the black across it, and then do the second half of the backwards knot with our blue string, effectively locking in that color change. And we're going to follow it up with 5 knots of our red color. Okay, so we've done all 5 knots in our red color. We're now going to do a color change. So we're working in mirror, everything's symmetrical. So we're going to do a blue knot now. So because we're still working right to left, it's going to be a backwards knot. So half a backwards knot, lay that red across the top of it, and then do the second half of the backwards knot. And then we're going to do another color change for Spidey's right armpit, the left side of the keychain, Spidey's right armpit. And we're going to do half of a backwards knot, and then we're going to lay that blue string across and tuck it underneath the bass strings and follow it up with the second half of that black knot, which we're going to follow with another color change. You guessed it. Gosh, you guys are so smart, man. So smart. We're going to pull that red string in. Careful not to lock anything else in. I can't emphasize that enough. You really don't want to do that. It's going to make your work more bumpy, or just pillow it. You just only lock in what you have to. So we're going to do 2 knots with our red string. So we've successfully done our color change here, and we're going to do one more for 2, and then the outline again, switching over to our black. We'll do half of our knot with our black, lay that red across that, tuck it underneath the bass strings, and do the second half of the black knot. And then at this point, we're going to grab our gray and finish out the row with our background color. Now reaching the left-hand edge of our bracelet, we're going to do a backwards forwards knot and start our next row with another backwards forwards knot. And then we're going to do 2 more gray knots for a total of 3 before we jump back into Spidey's body. And because Spidey's a cartoon, we have to bring that outline color in again and do a single knot to get that full cartoon effect. So we're going to do half of a forwards knot because we're working left to right. We're going to tuck our background string across and underneath the other bass strings, then finish out the second half of our outline knot there. And then we're going to switch to our red, and we're going to knot for one of the longer strings of color that we see in this pattern, which is a whole 11 knots of red. Okay, so we've done 11 knots with our red. Now we're going to switch and do the outline for the other shoulder here. Just a single black knot, and then we're going to finish out the row with our background color. And of course, coming up on the right hand side of our pattern, we're going to do a forwards backwards knot, followed by another forwards backwards knot for the start of our next row, and 3 more gray knots. Then we're going to switch to our outline color and do a single knot in that color. Actually, no, I lied, sorry. We're going to do 2 knots in that color, and this is the top of Spidey's shoulder. If you still haven't looked at the pattern and you're really not sure what you're looking at, it's the top of Spidey's shoulder. And then we're going to switch to our red color for just 2 knots this time. So there is 1, and here we go, 2. And at this point, we're going to switch back to our outline color, and we're going to do 3 knots with our black here, and that's going to be the bottom of Spidey's chin. So there's 1 and 2. 1 more makes 3. Seems to be a lot of groups of 3 in this pattern, or maybe I'm just imagining that. Then we're going to do the same thing we did on the right. So that's going to be 2 red knots. There's 1, and here we go, 2. Making sure everything's looking good, fine, fresh, and fancy. Then we're going to switch over to our outline color again and do the top of Spidey's other shoulder with 2 knots in that black outline color. And we're over halfway done this pattern now. This is really exciting. There's a lot less color changing going on in this half of the pattern than the top half, because we don't have any more blue in our pattern. We've used the rest of the blue. We're simplifying it. Spidey's whole face here is red in this pattern. So once we've got both knots of Spidey's shoulder there, we're going to finish out the row with 4 gray knots, and then we're going to do our edge knot, which is a backwards forwards knot, and go into the next row with 6 gray knots. So with 6 gray knots under our belt here, we're going to switch back to our outline color, doing half of the forwards knot, laying the gray string across that, tucking the rest underneath the bass strings, and doing the second half of that forwards knot. And we're going to do 1 more forwards knot without doing the color change, of course, but it's going to immediately be followed by another color change. Yeah, we're going to switch to red now, and we're going to do 3 knots with our red color. So this first one, of course, is part of the color change. We do half of it, tuck that black string through, and then do the second half of it, followed by 2 more just plain forwards knots. And then we're working in mirror. Everything is symmetrical, so we're going to do 2 black knots with our outline string there. We're going to do half of a forwards knot, and then we're going to grab that red string, lay it down across the top of that black half knot, and then finish the other half of the knot. And then we're going to do 1 more black knot, and then we're going to finish out the row with our background color, doing 6 gray knots, and then start the next row with 5 gray knots. Okay, so we went all the way to the edge, did our edge knots, came back and did 5 knots in our new row. Now we're going to switch to our outline color, of course, and we're going to do a single black knot, and then we're going to switch to our red, and we do another long line of red, not quite as long as the last. And this one we're going to do 7 red knots. So this first knot, of course, is going to be part of our color change. So we do half of the backwards knot, lay that black across, and then do the second half of the red knot, follow it by 6 more red knots, and then an outline color again. And as we do our outline color, we of course do half of the knot, flip that red across, tuck it underneath the base strings, and then do the second half of the knot. And of course we grab our background string now and we finish out the row mirroring what we did on the other side. So 5 knots of gray, and then we're going to turn around and start our next row with 4 gray knots. And after doing our 4 gray knots, we are going to switch to our outline color, and we're going to do a single knot to create that solid black outline. And then we're going to switch to our red again. So switching to that red, we of course pull it in, do half of a forwards knot, lay that black across and tuck it underneath the other bass strings, and do the second half of the forwards knot. And then we follow it up with 8 more red knots for a total of 9. And once we've reached that 9th knot, we're going to go ahead and change back to our outline color, doing half the black knot. Then we're going to lay the red string across that and underneath the other bass strings, and finish out the second half of that outline color for that solid comic book, you know, je ne sais quoi. And then we're going to grab that gray and we're going to do 4 knots with the gray, then turn around and start our next row with 3 gray knots. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to switch back to our background outline color. Outline color. My gosh, we're so far through this pattern, I'm still calling it background color. So we do 1 knot with our black color, and then we're going to switch to our red. Now we start Spidey's eyes on this row, so we're only going to do 2 knots of red. And then we're going to bring our outline color back in to outline the bottom of Spidey's eyes. And to do that, we're going to do 2 black knots. Okay, so at this point, we switch to our outline color and do 2 knots, like I said there. So there is 2, and that will be the bottom of Spider-Man's eye. But he does need somewhere for his nose to go, so we're going to go ahead and bring that red back in. We're going to do half our knot, lay the other part of that black string across the top, tuck it underneath our bass strings, and complete the red knot there for 1, 2, and 3 is the charm. And we're going to switch back to our outline color and do the bottom of Spidey's other eye with 2 knots. So there's half the knot for the color change. For 1 full knot, and then here we go for our second one. And because everything is symmetrical, we know we have to do 2 red knots here, and then 1 outline color. And now that we've got our single outline color knotted, we're going to finish out the row with 3 gray knots and start the next row with 3 gray knots. And now, of course, we're going to grab our outline color again, and we're really going to work on Spidey's eyes in this row. So we do 1 knot in our outline color. Then we're going to grab our red for just a single knot. And then we're going to switch to our outline color again. So this row has quite a few color changes in it. Even though we've dropped the blue now, we're done with the blue. Yes, this patterns are deceiving. I don't really look at them and go, there's a lot of color changes in this anymore. I'm kind of past that, and for some reason I keep surprising myself with how many color changes are in the patterns I seem to choose. Now we're going to bring in our white for the first time since we did that web at the start of the pattern. And we're going to do 2 knots with our white string. And this is going to make up kind of the main body of Spider-Man's eyes in his mask there. And we're going to bring that outline color back in for 1 knot. And then we're going to do 1 red knot to split the eyes up. And we're going to mirror what we just did on the other side of our pattern. So bringing in our red, there's a lot of colors here that want to come with it. So I'm just fishing all of those out and making sure that I'm really only locking in the colors I absolutely need to. Because A, the safe string, because you're not wrapping your string around a whole big chunk of strings. And B, like I said, it helps you keep your alpha from getting bumpy or getting that pillowing effect. Even if your knots aren't bumpy, your whole bracelet can have like a pillowed kind of look. So there is our 1 red knot. Now we're going to switch back to our outline color, and we're going to do Spidey's other eye. Spidey's left eye, our right side of the pattern. So we do half of our forwards knot with that outline color, lay that red across, and do the second half of the outline color. Then we're going to do 2 white knots. And again, we're working left to right, so we are doing forwards knots. Sometimes I feel like a broken record when I describe these things, but I know especially beginners like to see full explained tutorials that don't just skip ahead. So that's why I try to be as thorough as possible, even though by the end of these tutorials, I sometimes feel like I'm just repeating myself. Now we're going to grab our outline color again, and we're going to do just a single knot to get that single outline, as the name outline would indicate, you know. So there we go, 1 knot. Now we're going to switch back to our red. We're going to do 1 red knot and then switch to our outline yet again and do 1 black knot with that outline string. And now we're going to finish out this row with our background color, doing 3 knots, and it's going to start the next row with 3 knots in our background color as well. Now we're going to gear up for some more color changes. So we're going to do our outline color, of course, doing one single outline knot. Then we're going to switch to our red and we're going to do one single red knot to reach into Spidey's eye. And this is actually going to be the last row that we use any white on. So that's exciting. We're getting close to finishing this pattern. So now we're going to grab our outline color and we're going to do a single knot with our black to outline the edge of Spidey's eye. We're going to bring in that white string and we're going to do a single knot with the white string to do the top of his kind of pointed style eye. And then we're going to switch back to the black string again for a single outline knot. And then we're going to switch into our red and we're going to do 3 knots with our red to space out those eyes, because now we're really giving that, it's not quite a teardrop shape, but kind of a teardrop shape to his eyes. And in doing so, we're going to grab this red, we're going to do 3 knots with it. So there's 1. And of course we're working right to left, so these are backwards knots. There's 2, 1 more is 3, and then we're going to make it look exactly like we did on the right, on the left hand side here. So we're going to grab our outline color and we're going to do a single black knot. There we go, lay our red across the half knot and do the second half of the knot. And you can really, even with just, like without even finishing the top of Spidey's eye, you can really see just from this row, that kind of signature shape coming into play here. And this pattern looks so good. Just something about just that like bright red and bright blue is just so classic and looks so clean. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. So we've done 1 knot with our white, and that is the final white knot of the pattern. So we're going to go ahead and do the outer outline of Spidey's eye here. And then we're going to do a single red knot followed by another single outline knot. So many color changes. Once we've done that outline color, we're going to finish out the row with our background color, doing 3 knots in gray, turning around and starting the next row with 3 knots of gray as well. Very similar for these next couple rows. Now we're going to switch to our outline color again, and we're going to jump into our color changes. So we're going to do a single knot with our outline color here, laying that background color across that half knot, of course, and doing the second half of the knot to finish out that color change. Then we're going to do 1 single red knot. Again, we do half of the forwards knot, lay that black color across that half knot, tuck it underneath the bass strings, and do the second half of the forwards knot. And then we're going to switch 1 more time to do the outline on Spidey's eye. At least this time we're going to do 2 knots with our black string because we are done with the white, as I said. So there's 1 and 2. Now we're going to change back to our red, and we're going to go with red for 5 knots. And as we did on the left, we're going to do on the right. So we're going to grab that outline color and we are going to do 2 knots with it. So starting off with our color change, we are going to do half of a forwards knot, lay that red across that half knot, tuck it underneath the bass strings, and do the second half of the forwards knot. And then we're going to do 1 more forwards knot, and we're going to switch back to our red, pulling that in. We're going to do half of a forwards knot. Again, it's forwards because we're working left to right. So there's half of the knot. Then we're going to put that black across and tuck it underneath and do the second half of the red forwards knot. Then we're going to grab our outline color again because we got to outline Spidey's head. Like, they would just look weird if it just stopped all of a sudden. So we're going to do 1 knot with our black, and then we're going to finish out the row with our gray, doing 3 knots and starting the next row with 3 knots of gray as well. Okay folks, it's only getting easier from here. We grab this outline color and we're going to do a single knot with our outline color. Now we're going to grab our red and we're going to do a single knot with our red color. Just the one. So that's half of a backwards knot because we're working right to left. Then we're going to lay that black across that half knot and tuck it underneath the bass strings and do the second half of the red backwards knot. Then we're going to grab our outline color 1 more time, and this will be the last outline we do inside of Spider-Man. Well, once we do the other eye, but this is the last knot on this eye. So we do that single black knot. Now we're going to do 7 red knots before we do that outline knot again. And once we've got those 7 red knots, we're going to pull our black in for that single outline knot. And this is the last inside outline we do on Spider-Man. So we're going to do 1 black knot, and then we're going to switch back to our red string. We're going to do 1 knot with our red. Of course, doing half the backwards knot, lay that black string across for the last time on the inside of Spidey here. Finish out that red knot, grab your outline color again, and do a single knot, and follow that up with 3 knots with your gray string. Turn around, start the next row with 3 knots of your background color as well. Now I said it only got easier. So we're going to grab our black string, we are going to do a single knot with it. There's 1. Now we're going to switch to our red and we're going to do a nice solid line of 11 knots with our red color, and then do 1 more outline. So here we are. We're going to do our one outline knot, and then we're going to switch back to our background color, and our background color is going to do 3 knots to end out this row and then 3 knots to start the next row. Now we're going to grab our outline color after finishing those 3 knots. We're going to do a single knot, and just like the last row, after that single knot, we're going to grab our red and we are going to knot for another 11 knots, working right to left. That's 11 backwards knots, and then do one more outline. We are almost done, folks. So we're going to grab that outline color and we are going to do a single knot with that outline color. Do half the backwards knot, lay that red across, tuck it underneath, and finish out your backwards knot. Grab that gray background string and do 3 knots with the gray background string. And then we're going to turn around and do 4 knots with the gray string to start our next row. Woo-hoo-hoo! Are you guys excited? I am. So we're going to do half of our black outline knot here, and we're going to finish it out, do one more, and then we are going to do 9 red knots. We're finishing off Spidey's head here. There's one more row after this. So 9 red knots, and then we're going to do another outline knot. You guessed it. All right, so we've done our 9 red knots. Now we're going to switch to our outline color. We are going to do a single black knot, doing half of a forwards knot, laying that red across it. Do the second half of the forwards knot, and then finish out the row with 4 gray knots, and start the next row with 5 gray knots. Okay, so we've reached 5 gray knots. We're going to grab that outline color and we are going to do 2 knots with the outline color this time around. And then we're going to switch to our red and we are going to do 5 knots with our red. And this will be the last we use our red. Yes, this is the top of Spidey's head. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. We'll switch back out to our outline color. And just as we did on the right hand side, we are going to do 2 black knots on the left hand side here. So there's 1. There's 2. And then we're going to finish out the row with 5 gray knots and start the next row with 7 gray knots. Alright guys, this is it. This is the last row of the pattern. So once we've done those 7 gray knots, we're going to grab our outline color and we're going to do 5 black knots to close out Spidey's head. And then we are going to finish out the row with your background color. And that is technically the entire pattern. I, however, opted to do an extra line of just gray because I thought it would really give the effect of Spidey being like suspended, and I just felt like it would look a little more finished. So I finish out this row with my gray with the 7 gray knots and then do a full pass with my gray string underneath this row. And at this point, you can finish off your keychain however you like, and bam! There's our finished result, all cleaned up and looking really, really crisp and nice. Here is the back for those of you who are curious. I love looking at the back of alphas. I think they look so cool. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. Being my first keychain, I've knotted right onto the keyring. So if you guys liked this video too, please give it a big old thumbs up, and until next time, bye!